What's going on, Nasty Nation? It's Nasty, and today I wanted to start a brand new series called Support Spectate. Basically, in this series, I'm just going to be watching over some replays of some lower ranked support players, kind of just giving them advice into areas that they should improve in, and just kind of coaching them here and there. So, without further ado, let's just see how it goes. So right off the back, there's already something that he could improve on. He's really late to get out of the fountain. He's not leaving the fountain until about 50 seconds in. And a lot of the times you can actually get yourself a pretty nice lead right off the get-go if you just are a little bit more active. His team could have easily walked into the jungle, not necessarily trying to invade, but they could have just looked to get some vision, get some early scouting, and they could have seen if they could have found somebody just kind of slacking off, sitting AFK waiting for minis to spawn, and that's an easy way to pick up a first blood and put your team ahead. But instead they went for a little bit more of a lazy option, and they're just sitting AFK, which is pretty common, but definitely something that he could have done better. Now it looks like his Udyr is going to start blue buff, which means they're going to have to leash. And generally when you leash, you don't want to walk through the river because it's very easy for the enemy team to be sitting there waiting for you. But because Vladimir is already showing top, that means that the bot lane on the enemy team also had to leash. So it's okay for them to walk through there, but just a tip, sometimes it's not always the best option. Sometimes it's better to go around. So Nami actually does a good amount of damage for most caster supports, and especially when they're against a Janna, this lane should be really aggro for them. Even though Vayne is late scaling, Nami does a lot more damage than Janna does, so he should definitely be further up in the lane, trying to trade with Jhin as much as he can. An easy way to tell that you're not being active enough in lane as you should be as Nami is if you are full mana, because Nami should run into a lot of mana problems. So if you're full mana, that means you're not being active enough, you're not using enough spells, so gotta get a lot more involved. Looks like they're going for a trade. He should be auto-attacking here. Not the best trade on Vayne's behalf, but he definitely could have made it a lot better if he was autoing the whole time. They're going to trade that. So right there, he could have actually made that trade a lot better if he was A, auto-attacking the whole time instead of sitting back. And then he also should have leveled E second, because leveling Q, if you can land it, it's a lot better, but Nami's Q is really difficult to land compared to most skill shots. So it's a lot better to just get E and get that extra damage and slow guaranteed. It looks like he didn't decide to recall when Vayne went down. He decided to stay in lane. Not the best option, because now they're going to be at a slight item disadvantage. Even though it is small, it will make a little bit of a difference. I think it would have been a better option for him to recall there, let the wave do whatever it was, because Jhin wasn't in lane anyways, so he could have just backed, got the item or whatever he could have afforded, and then got back to lane. Now you can see, because they had the item disadvantage, they started losing trades a little bit more often. They got chunked a lot more than they could do damage to the opposing team. That's just a horrible play on Jhin. I'm not going to give him props for that. Like I was saying, because they had a item disadvantage, they weren't able to do as much damage in the trades, which meant that they got pushed out of lane a lot faster. And had he went back earlier and had a little bit more damage, maybe they could have been able to trade back evenly. Taking a look, he just got back to base. He has 2 kills, one from earlier in the 1-for-1 trade, and then the second one from that terrible play by Jhin. Let's look what he's going to buy. He's going to go for the early Sightstone. I don't think I agree with that, even though it's not considered an Ardent meta anymore. I still think Ardent is the go-to buy, and I don't think you need Sightstone that badly in solo queue games. You'll see in pro play they'll go for the Sightstone early because they need the vision. Solo queue doesn't make that big of a difference. I would have rather seen him go for probably the first half of Ardent on top of this upgrade right here with the Spell Thieves. Now, I've been saying for the entirety of the laning phase that he should be playing up and trading more, and now that they have a 2-kill advantage, even though it's on the support, they do have a 2-kill advantage. He should certainly be playing further up, and I'm hoping that he'll start abusing his W for trades more often. One way that they could be essentially sizing up their lead is he could try to zone off the enemy, and if they back off, then they know how much respect they have and how much space they're willing to give. If they don't decide to back off and they try to fight, then you're getting a little bit of an understanding there. But he should try to push his limits a little bit right now, since they do have that 2-kill advantage, and see how much he can actually zone them off. So there's a couple things that I want to point out that are going to happen over the next few seconds. First thing is he's going to hit 6, which means they have a large power spike over the enemy team. But instead of utilizing that, he's actually just going to back off. He definitely should have gone in right here, tried to get that trade while they had the ultimate up. And then the next thing that he's going to do wrong is he's going to go to drop a ward, which is excellent. You want to get vision for your ADC, obviously. But a lot of the times your ADC is going to be too focused on getting CS that they're not going to notice that you leave lane. And he's actually, the Vayne is going to get chunked and have to waste a summoner. So it would have been better for him to ping off the ADC and let him know. He doesn't necessarily have to type, but just use your pings to let him know that he's going to ward. So right after Vayne got chunked out of lane, after he had to blow a flash and then eventually back, what I would have liked for him to do is actually make a roam over to mid lane, or at least get some vision down in the jungle. Him sitting over here is just picking up XP, which isn't that valuable as a support. So he definitely could have been a lot more effective, kind of moving over to the other side of the map, seeing if he could help out mid, because there was a trade and a kill that actually just went down. So he could have been a part of that, or nonetheless he could have just got some vision in the jungle. What I am liking to see right here though is he's making this route through the jungle instead of going straight bot lane. It's generally a good idea after you recall to take this route instead of just heading straight down bottom, because you could easily pick up on a fight mid lane, run into the jungler, or in this case contest a dragon. Whereas if you just straight run bot lane, you're not going to get much done. You're kind of just wasting your time. Use his ult from really far, which was a good idea, as Nami, your ult does more damage and knocks up for longer depending on how far it travels. So that was a really good use of his ultimate from really far, and then he backed it up with his Q, which was really nice. Looks like they might be trying to bait them into something here. He dodges the Q, got the bubble. Ooh, Vayne attacked the wrong person. That's not who we're evaluating though. A little over eager by Udyr. They should have backed off right after the flash was wasted. Now he just needs to run. Don't bother saving them, they're already dead. And that's the right call by him. So I praised him earlier about his route towards mid instead of running straight bot. He's going against what he just did. He's doing the exact opposite of what I wanted him to. Right now he's kind of just sitting bot, soaking up this XP, CSing a little bit. That's not your job as a support. You want to help out your team as much as possible. There's this little fight that's going on mid lane. He definitely could have been a part of this, and instead he was sitting bot, so that's a little bit on him. Right now it looks like he's just trying to hold this wave with GP, and lands a nice bubble. Falls with up the ulti. Clean play. As we're pushing into the mid game here, it looks like the teams are going to start grouping up and trying to get some of these more major objectives. You know, the tier 1 towers, maybe some dragons. And in these fights, what I'm mainly looking from him is I'm just trying to see if he can manage to line up his Q and his R together. Like that. Gets the exhaust down. That's exactly what I was looking for. Alright, so a fight is about to go really bad for them right here, and I want to see what exactly happens, so I'm going to slow it down. Looks like he gets way too overeager trying to land the bubble on Janna when they don't have vision of the entire team. And on top of that, they are missing some crucial ultimates here from GP and from himself. So that is a very greedy play that did not work out for them. Looks like he's arriving to a team fight just a little bit late, and by the time he's getting here, the fight is already lost. At this point, his main goal should just be to peel and disengage as best as he can. He still has his ultimate though. There it is. Kind of wasted it considering Vlad had his W, but I guess it did work out because it pushed the enemy teams away. Land the bubble on Zoe. Don't overcommit. Nice. This situation, his team's going a little bit too deep, actually a lot too deep. I think what you should do here is just try to peel as best as you can and then get out, yeah. As a support, you want to try to help out your team as much as you can, but sometimes if they are just putting them into a situation where they're going to die no matter what, just leave them. I mean, you could try to help as much as you can, but then just get out before you put yourself in danger as well. But right now, he's trying to get some vision for his team, and you'll see as it plays out that he's going to get collapsed on and eventually have to waste his ultimate. It's important that whenever you're trying to get some vision, especially later into the game, that you're always moving as a team so that this kind of stuff doesn't happen. Because he could have got picked, or just had to waste a flash, or in this case he had to waste an ult. So try to move as a team so that that kind of stuff doesn't happen. Teamfight's breaking out now. He's doing an okay job of staying towards the back, just trying to apply heals to whoever's lowest HP. Now he's catching himself a little bit too far up. Start of that fight, he was doing a good job staying back, then he edged forward a little bit too much. At this point in the game is still pretty close. Both teams are only separated by 1,000 gold, and he's actually doing the perfect move right now, which is trying to get vision around Baron and topside. Mid lane is the furthest lane that is pushed in. The two side lanes still have a second tier turret, so top lane is their main focus because Baron's up there, and he's doing a really good job of getting vision down there. GP's getting picked here. Could have timed that bubble a little bit better. One of the most important things on Nami that might hurt his team a little bit. This is actually fine because he's keeping Vlad occupied. He needs to go back and reach. Oh, actually, Jin's over here. Nice. Okay, well played. He did a good job of keeping his distance, and he kept Vlad separated from the rest of the team. Only thing he could have done better there was layering his R and his Q better, but that's just nitpicking. So what we're about to see Nami do right here is something that I actually praise him a lot for. A lot of people are afraid to shot call, and he knows that this is a good call, so he's leading his team to do it, and he's just starting it up right away because it's going to practically force them to go into the situation that he wants, and it's just a really good call on his part. Once again, going back to what I was saying earlier, late game, you really want to make sure you're with your team when you're going to get vision. He's going to get away with it here, but he's really far out, and the enemy team could easily turn on him. But this flank stacked it up nicely on the Jhin, but he doesn't have follow-up. A little bit too anxious there trying to make a play. I like the eagerness, but a little bit too eager. So far, he's been doing a pretty decent job of shot calling and kind of leading his team in the right direction, which is really important for a support to kind of do, because as a support you don't have that much carry potential, at least compared to the solo laner. So shot calling is a really easy way to carry a game, but that's another easy way to carry a game is by making picks like that. Really good setup by him, really good redemption. He's getting a little bit too far forward though, needs to keep his distance. One of the biggest problems that I've seen with him for sure is his positioning in team fights. Started that out really good right there with the good R into Q combo, but then stepped a little bit too far forward. The enemy team stayed their welcome a little too long. He's going to be able to pick out Vi here. Pretty good combo. I would rather him stack that a little bit earlier, but it works nonetheless. They should get this kill and then look Baron. And they do. And again, I gotta praise him once again. Really good job on the shot calling. You can see that his teammates did not come to Baron right away, but he's doing his best. If you look in the chat, he's pinging his team to get the Baron. That's all he really can do. You can't play for all your teammates, but you can try to point them in the right direction as much as possible. This team's just now coming off of a dragon, and he's gonna walk to the enemy jungle, use the combo, but it's a little too soon because his team's not nearby. You really got to make sure that when you're looking for these picks that your team is there, because now a team fight's about to break out. Holy, that 4-man bubble. Like I was saying though, a team fight's about to break out. This could have went a lot worse because he had wasted a couple of his cooldowns, but he managed to save it with that really good Q. He should have been a little bit more safe and a little bit more patient. They're crashing in onto the Nexus turns right now. It doesn't look like the enemy team has too much of a chance of winning this. They do manage to kill off the Udyr. He's doing a lot better in his positioning now, staying far back, except he's not paying attention to himself. You got to be able to pay attention to both your positioning and your HP. Fixed one problem, but added another. A little bit too far up, a little bit too anxious trying to end the game there. I thought they had a good chance, but you got to make sure that they're watching the respawn timers for sure. So they're coming off of a small throw, but they still have a pretty decisive lead. I think all they need to do here is just group mid, look to see if they can get a pick. If not, just try to siege down this mid tower. Fight's breaking out. They're already really chunked. Looks like this is going to be a lost fight. if we rewind a little bit, we can actually see that they went in once again a little bit too early. Vayne is out of position, and on top of that, they had to waste a few ultimates. Let's take another look at this. So yeah, like I said, just way too overeager. Vayne's out of position, had to waste a few ultimates. And then something I mentioned a long time ago for my longtime viewers in my my Nami guide is Nami is not the best engage champion. She's a lot better at following up on engages. Right there, he got way too full of himself in a way. He tried to make the play for his team. I like his willingness to go and sacrifice himself, but just not the best champion to do that. Baron's back up. They're looking to get a pick ahead of time, though. Him and Udi are doing some work all alone. He managed to land a good amount of his CC, so this was working out pretty well. They got one kill. It's going to be a 1-for-1. Good job on landing his CC. Good positioning so far. Really well played. Looks like they're about to get into a pretty awkward situation here. They tried to do a two-man Baron sneak right after that little skirmish, but he didn't have his lens up, and he didn't have any control wards in his inventory. I can't blame him too much on the control wards. If you look at his build, he's pretty full. Only thing I could say is maybe have control wards over Chalice, but that's not very common in solo queue. Doesn't think it's going to make too much of a difference, though, because Janna and Zoe face check, and they get 2 of the kills, and now they can turn back on Baron. I'm thinking this is going to be the final push here. Looking in on his build, he just finished full build. He's 6'3" and 24. Speaking of his build, I'll go a little bit more in depth on that after the game, and we'll also take a look at his runes, but let's just tune into this final push and see how he plays it out. Actually, he might get into the action right away, and a nice pick on the Janna. Looks like this is going to be the game-ending fight. Nothing really too special happening here. Flashes forward just for the extra style points. Kind of just ran straight at him, had the 4v5 fight there due to his pick, and that'll be the end of the game. Well played. Okay, so let's look at the final statistics. The main thing I'm looking for here is KDA matters a little bit. Kill participation, build, and runes, that's what we're narrowing down on the most. And also you could take a look at his damage. His damage was pretty decent, even though I think he could have been a little bit more aggressive. A couple times, you know, just autoing and trying to trade a little bit more often. He still did a good amount of damage, so props to him on that. Let's take a look at the build. I actually don't think I would change much on the build aside from rushing Ardent in the beginning instead of starting out with the support item. Like I said in the beginning, wards just aren't that important in solo queue. So I think even though Ardent was nerfed, it's probably still the best option. I would rather see him go Ardent, then into Eye of the Watchers. Redemption, Locket is really good. I like getting that before my last CDR item, and then Crucible to top it off. So again, I agree with his entire build, aside from the ordering with the first and second items. Skill order, another thing I touched on earlier. I would rather have him take E second. Q is one of those things where it's either going to give you a really big reward or it's going to hurt you a lot. If you miss that Q, then you're very vulnerable for the enemy team to go all in on you. If you take E second, then you have a very reliable slow and a little bit of extra damage. Aside from that, though, W max into E max into Q max with a point in R whenever you can. It's perfect. Looking into runes now, Sorcery is the right option. Airy, of course, super OP right now. Really good on Nami. Right here, though, is his first mistake. As I said earlier, once again, Nami should have a lot of mana problems. The fact that he didn't need this rune means that he wasn't playing aggro enough in lane, not spamming his abilities enough to trade. Mana Flow Band should be the go-to option here. The last two things that I disagree with in his rune page comes right here. Transcendence gives you 10% CDR when you reach level 10. Also very good on Nami. And when you get that Crucible last item, because you are going to want that Crucible, you will be at the max CDR regardless. So this will also turn that extra CDR into a little bit of extra damage. And the other thing that I disagreed with was in his Inspiration Tree. Inspiration Tree is the right thing, but instead of taking this Futures Market, which allows you to go into debt, I'd rather have him get the Magical Footwear. Gives him free boots. It's not the most flashy or just the fanciest rune to take, but I think this on top of Cosmic Insight is definitely the best option, and that'll top off the runes. So just to wrap up here, some things that I think he kind of needs to improve on: his positioning in team fights. Sometimes it was really good, other times not so good. Engages, a lot of the times he was getting that good RQ combo off, other times he was a little bit not on top of it. It takes a little bit of practice when playing Nami to get that timing down. That's something you can use some work on. Some things that I think need some major practice on is his laney phase. Nami can be very aggressive in certain matchups. This matchup in particular against Janna, he had an opportunity to play a lot more aggro and use a lot more of his abilities. As I said, he did not use enough of his abilities because he had way too much mana. So that's another thing he'd work on, being more aggro, trying to be more lane dominant as Nami. The last thing that I think he really needs to work on is his engages. Nami is best, once again, more as a follow-up engager, not as the main engage. Sometimes he got a little bit too far ahead of himself, which was part of that bad positioning part in team fights, because he was trying to push up too much and be the one to engage in fights. He needs to kind of just sit back a little bit more, let his team go in, start the fight, pile up on that start of the skirmish with his CC. That'll make it a lot more easier for him to land, and overall it'll allow him to be more effective. So that is going to be the end of this video, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed. This was my first time doing something like this, so hopefully I did a good job. Hopefully I wasn't too biased. I tried to give a little bit more advice rather than just talk about all the things he did good, because after all, I was trying to coach him in a way. So also, if you would like to be the next person that I help out or coach in a sense, let me know down in the comments below why I should pick you, why you need the coaching more than anybody else. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. And as always, I will see you guys next time. Peace.